Hey 933 fans, Kristian here today to talk to you about two simple things that are both awesome and can speed your edits up a ton. The first thing I want to show you is my quick trick for emulating film grain. As with most things digital, everything is more sharp and clean, unlike how film stock, which recreates your scene with a little more grit and tonal range. So when I'm editing, especially with black and white images, I like to play around with adding a layer or two of film grain to knock down the crispiness of a digital pic. So the first thing that you want to do, open up Photoshop, obviously, and open up a picture that you want to work with. This is the new homepage image for my website. And if you haven't already, down here, be sure to duplicate your original photo. I've talked about it before. You always want to work as non-destructively as possible, so if you have to go back, you always have that original copy to go off of. So to do that, you just select the layer. I've already done it here, but I can do it again. Select the layer and hit Command or Control J, and it will automatically duplicate that layer there. The next step is to create a new blank layer above that copy. So to do that, Shift, Command or Control and End, and will pop up a new layer. I go ahead and title that Film Grain and click OK. So the foundation for film grain is built off a 50% gray fill. So to fill that newly created layer, hold down Shift, Delete. And depending on what you used in the past, this may be something different. So under the contents window here in use, go ahead and click that and select 50% gray and click OK. So it'll fill that layer with 50% gray. With the film grain layer still selected, navigate up to Filter, Noise, Add Noise. In this box is where you can kind of play with your grain amount. Once you're comfortable with creating your film grain, you can kind of toy with it, get your desired look. But for my default settings, I like to use an amount of 7%. Let's go ahead and type in 7. Under distribution, I always use Gaussian blur, and then check monochromatic. I like everything to be black and white on my film grain. I don't want the little color dots in there. So go ahead and click OK. Once you do that, it applies it right to that film grain layer. So go back up to Filter and click Blur, Gaussian blur. Now you can either do a 0.5% or 1%. My default's 1%, but again you can play around with it once you're comfortable. So I'm going to go ahead and type in 1 and click OK. So it kind of just blurs that film grain a little bit, makes it a little less noticeable, a little less crisp. So for the final step, click on the composite layer drop down menu here, which is a list of various blending modes that essentially do that. They blend image against image or image against color, etc. Let's go ahead and click on that and click Overlay. And Overlay basically mixes the colors between layers, preserving the highlights and the shadows. And depending on what you're using it for, can intensify the layer underneath. And it's very subtle for this application, which is exactly what we're looking for. And that's basically it for film grain. If you zoom in here and toggle it on and off, you can see the difference. Makes it look a little less razor sharp, and sometimes I'll even duplicate it 1, 2, or 3 times, just depending on what I'm going for. So I'm actually going to move this one above my wash layer. Then I'm going to duplicate it again and move it above my logo layer here. So you can see right away the grit it just adds to it. So if I zoom in and toggle both of those off, see how it's kind of smooth and crispy. If I turn those back on, kind of knocks that down and just gives it something a little extra. And that's basically it for film grain. It's a really simple thing that can add a pretty big effect to your photos when applied correctly. So say you're going to be adding that to a bunch of photos, or even 5 photos, and you don't want to have to go through that process every time or drag the layer from one PSD to the next PSD. What you can do is automate that, and you automate it through Photoshop's actions. And actions is a simple way to record every click you make and every setting you type in when creating something in Photoshop, whether it's for a photo or even designing. And so to do that, I'll just toggle these off, but you can delete your film grain layer if you'd like. So to create your own action, we're going to go up to Window, Actions. And if it's already over here in your window, just look for the play symbol and go ahead and click that, and opens right up. The next thing we want to do is create a folder to store our actions in. And to do that, you just click the folder icon here, name it whatever you'd like, and click OK. With that folder selected, now we can record ourselves creating the film grain layer by highlighting the folder we just created and clicking on the folded corner paper icon at the bottom of the palette right here. Click that, title it Film Grain, and click Record. Now from here on out, until you click the stop button, Photoshop will record everything you click. So let's run through our making film grain steps really quick. So we're going to create a new layer, title it Film Grain. Fill that layer with 50% gray. Go up to Filter, Noise, Add Noise. Type in 7%. Click Gaussian and check the monochromatic button and click OK. Then go back up to Filter, select Blur, Gaussian Blur. Type in 0.5%, 1%, whatever you want, and click OK. And then go into our composite mode drop down here and select Overlay. And that's the last step for the film grain, so we're going to click Stop at the bottom of the Actions palette here. And we just created our first action, our film grain action. So now, if you wanted to add that to however many photos you wanted, you can just select it here in the Actions palette and click the play button, and it will automatically run through everything you just did. So if you didn't catch that, we'll delete these here. Select film grain and click play, and it automatically pops it right over here into your palette. And that's it. A few simple steps to create film grain and a few simple steps to create an action to automate that film grain. And creating actions can be applied to any broad number of things that you do in Photoshop. So go ahead and play around with that and see what you can come up with. Thank you for watching today's tutorial on 933.com. Be sure to check out our newly created Facebook page at facebook.com/933it. And I'll see you next time.